Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm coming back at you with the red hot topic of how to get better at calculation. This is something that a lot of people struggle with on club level chess. The adult improver's greatest enemy is the how to get better at calculation. So I'm going to address this topic today with a sort of a lesson, and I also am going to model how and why I think that the presence of a chess coach, even if not on a regular basis, but every now and then, can vastly change the look of how we train, how we get better, and how we identify our greatest shortcomings that are associated with calculation. The first thing I would like to mention before we get started is that I find that there is a reasonably firm line. I don't know where exactly this line is drawn, but I would say somewhere around the 1700 Lee chess mark and the equivalent of that on chess.com, where below that, people tend to fall short in terms of tactics by virtue of having a poor tactical repertoire, having reasonably poor pattern recognition. On the other side of this line is the people above that magical rating, like I said, wherever that is drawn, who have got decent pattern recognition already built up, but somehow their actual calculating ability is the issue that is holding them back. And this second group is what I'm going to mostly cater for in this video. Now, what I'm going to do and show you now is actually an experiment that I have conducted for the purpose partly to actually be able to deliver this video to you. Also, the other side of the coin was to deliver a very good, hopefully, lesson to my students. So this game I showed about 5 or 6 students of actually different rating levels, all the way from 1700 rapid, although that practical student is vastly underrated, to 2200 rapid. So I covered a large rating range to use the same material to see as a coach what I can get out of the situation. So let's dive right into this game. And now I'm going to do this lesson with you, although obviously it's difficult without having the opportunity to talk to you. The game is a Grandmaster game. Grandmaster Weiser from France against Dautov, I believe a Russian dude who ended up migrating to Germany, I believe. And we come to the first crucial point of the game right here after h4, white throwing in the fishing pole idea, which is that after take we have got this deadly h-file attack, and so white goes like, well, take me if you dare. And so at this point I actually interviewed all my 6 students, which I'm going to do now with you too, and I asked them, should black take or not, and give me reasons. And that's exactly what I'm going to give you now. And pause the video if you want, figure out what you can, and then listen to what I have to say. So the number one issue here is that about 50% of students came back to me not providing lines. So the answer almost invariably was that no, we shouldn't take on d6 because it's scary and it looks to me that white is gonna have a crazy attack. Now that is 100% perfectly insufficient, even if the actual call is correct that black shouldn't take on g5. So here is the we are not calculating, or we are not calculating enough scene. So now I would poke and prod, and I would tell them, fine, give me a line that proves it wrong. And then I would already suggest what, by the way, it was the second greatest shortcoming of almost every single student in this experiment. I would hint that please try to do your best when you are defending. And so now I'm asking you, in case you fell into the first category, but if you had a line, it's even better, to come up with some variations, see what black can do after taking on g5. And now again, I will let you pause the video. And now I will come back to you and I will tell you that more than half of my students failed to come up with the only move for black here that actually keeps the ball rolling. Actually, there are 2 moves that keep the ball rolling. One of them is g6, and almost everyone failed to find this, which is by far the greatest challenge for white to overcome. The other variation is d6, and if you haven't had a look at that, I would like to challenge you to evaluate it now, calculate a line, and come up with what you think is good for or best for both sides, and how that goes. I'm going to show you what that line is, and that line goes like this. White's best is takes queen h5, and for black here, to avoid the immediate disaster, queen h6 is forced, and white here actually needs to be accurate. Queen takes h6, pawn takes h6, and castles protecting the d4 pawn allows white to obtain a clear advantage, because the h6 pawn is chronically weak, and yeah, after piling up on the h5 with the rooks, the black king is also going to feel a little bit ticklish. By now, we are definitely exploring a very interesting concept, which I think is at the very core of why is my tactics, why does my tactics suck, or why do I not perform well in tactics department. And the reason for that, more than likely, is because you are not doing enough of what I'm making you to do now, which is to calculate, to evaluate, and then draw a conclusion. This is some kind of a holy trinity, like three things coming together that actually very rarely do come together in club level players' minds, and that is that they very often calculate lines, but then they don't evaluate. That's the most common, which is a total waste of time, because the sole purpose of calculating a line is to evaluate it in the end. And once you have an evaluation, we then need to put these lines together, measure up the evaluations, and make a decision based on said evaluations, which is again another thing that, amazingly enough, quite often breaks down. So we calculate, we evaluate, but we don't put the evaluations together in one bunch to cherry pick the one that is the most, appealing to us based on how we evaluated. So what we are doing now, you and I, is that I'm making you calculate lines, evaluate them, and tell me what you think they do to you. And this methodology is something that I think is not featured enough in terms of quantity, but also well enough, meaning in quality, in the adult improvers, the amateur level players' games. They do not follow this procedure. And also at this point, I need to mention to you that in order to pull this off properly in your games, and this is why I'm a huge advocate of longer time controls, you can forget about your 10-10s. Totally. There is no way that 1/10 of what I'm going to do with you now, you could replicate in a game under such time constraint. You need more time. And there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, so the other variation that I was talking about was G6. And this is where we get to the very sticky end of the business, because after G6, and actually this was the first turning point in my lessons, where people went like, oh, well, after G-F6, Queen F6, E5, Queen F4, and black seems to be actually doing better. And so that was the first point when they went like, well, actually, so it turns out that black should accept the sacrifice, and then after G6, there is no good way to progress on. So then I would be like, and by the way, I'm getting this game from a book. And the book, if you do what I am doing in the book, you are going to play through many of the lines without actually stopping, because at a lot of points, it's counterintuitive to stop. For example, right now. So this is where the coach comes in, who goes like, nah, stop. Is this really the best for white? If you are reading the book, almost inevitably you will play out the next move instead of stopping yourself every step of the way. It's very difficult to play the guess the game or the guess the move without, having an incentive, having something to have in the back of your mind that you want to achieve by what you want your student to achieve. So here you are asking this question. So hang on a tick. So after G6, white has no attack left in this position. And that's a provocation to the student to look for other ideas other than the most obvious looking GF6. And upon receiving this provocation, almost certainly and inevitably, everyone will find, I will pause here for a sec so you can too, pawn E5. And now the ball is thrown back again to the coach's side, who will probably and hopefully will go right. Like, okay, give me the best line. Note here the language. The best line for both colors and evaluate it for me. What's going to happen if from here on out, black plays the best, white plays the best moves? Give me the line that you think is going to match this criteria. Pause the video, go to town. So this is a really challenging task, and we are approaching the third problem, and there is probably 1,000 that I discovered by just doing this one game, and that is that most people, and probably I mentioned this already with G6, fail to find best defensive moves. And the reason for that is multiple. One, because subconsciously they don't want to, because they want this attack to break through. Two, it's hard work, because it's not fun to defend this. So you are very, very unmotivated to do your best for black because you want to believe in this, and defending sucks. Well, it's not as fun as attacking. And third, to come up with creative defensive ideas is far more difficult than to come up with creative attacking ideas like this e5 move. So the variation that I got from almost all students was either that after knight h7, queen g4, knight takes g5, queen h4, knight f3 check, black is winning. Which, by the way, is correct as long as we evaluate the position here. But almost nobody managed to find, without some extra instructions or poking, knight e4 as an attacking idea. And now after knight takes e4, queen h3, we have got an unstoppable mate on h8. If you manage to see all this, you would already be doing better than average. However, this is not even scratching the surface, because what we found was, and I actually allowed students to work from this position, but if you found it out without, that's amazing, that in this position, calculate with me now, because I want you to practice visualization too. After knight h7, queen g4, knight g5, knight e4, white has two threats, knight f6 check and knight takes g5. And both of these are stoppable by bishop e7. So now from this position, and once again, this is where the coach comes in, because it's unlikely that you would now backpedal 7 steps and make yourself think again in order to improve the depth of your calculation. I'm challenging you now to calculate the line once again. Knight h7, queen g4, knight g5, knight e4, bishop e7. White to move. Find the best moves for both sides. Evaluate. And actually, we all failed this, students and myself included. Only upon checking with the engine did I find out that our conclusions were wrong. But I will get to that. So here is how the line goes. If you wanted to figure it out, pause the video. Knight h7, queen here, knight g5, knight e4, bishop e7. Only move to cover these two squares. And here, after knight takes, bishop takes, queen h3, bishop h4, black has no problems. Because this is not going to be mate, and after the trade on h4, black is going to be fine. So no problems there. However, after knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, we have the amazing idea of knight e4. Well, that's not really amazing, but what is about to come is amazing. And now if the bishop retreats to e7, then there are various ways to bring it home. Queen h3, bishop h4, and then check is the simplest. I actually should have asked you to work this out. But here, black has got an absolutely next level defensive idea that still doesn't work, but it needed to be seen in order to be eliminated. And it would come to you as a cold shower if you didn't reckon with it. Pause the video, try to figure out black's best defense here. And here I come at you with queen e7 with the absolutely amazing idea that if knight takes g5, then queen b4 is a remarkably effective counterattack. And it turns out, actually, the book says that this variation would result in a draw by perpetual check. But that's actually not true at all, because white here is winning after king d1, queen takes b2, and simply rook c1, allowing a queen trade, an absolutely mind-blowing idea. By the way, this is easily well above grandmaster level calculation, but I wanted to show you for the sake of completeness. And after rook c3, white is going to win. I didn't see this when I had the lesson with any of my students. We didn't find any of this, but once again, this is the real chess, when you calculate like mad and you reckon with absolutely amazing counterpunching ideas like this. And so we concluded incorrectly that this bishop e7 idea holds for black, and in fact black is slightly better off. And once again, if you calculate that and you draw a wrong conclusion, it is still doing at least 2/3 of the job and doing it right, which is that you calculated, you evaluated, and in fact you even then made a decision on that. The evaluation was wrong. But if you perform all this and you make a mistake somewhere along the lines, that's way better, incomparably better, than simply omitting any of the steps or all the 3 of them. It's a lot easier to fix a calculating mistake in a long variation in terms of, okay, how do we improve from here, than fixing something that doesn't exist, that you need to build from scratch. And that is actually what I'm trying to achieve with this video, is to model to you the type of mindset and thinking that you need to perform in every single game. Now, the game continued with... Yes, they played king g7 here. And I challenged my students here to tell me how they would continue the game. And unfortunately, for the example and me as a coach, here white has 2 different winning ideas, and both of them are equally good. So it's interesting what you would find. I would like to pass the ball to your court, find a win for white, and see how you go. So 2 winning lines. One of them is rook takes h7. Now, after king takes queen h4 check, king g7 makes very little sense because it just forces the queen in. Instead, king g8, knight e4. Now, knight f6 can only be parried by essentially f5. When after gf, rook f7, knight g5, I think this is a good point to call it off, because it's crystal clear that black has absolutely nothing against the incoming bishop d3, bishop takes g6, and it's an easy win. It's just incredible how, despite of the tremendous material advantage, black has no chance whatsoever to escape. That's one line. The other one was played in the game, which is really spectacular. Knight h5 check. Takes, rook here, check here, and bishop d3. And if you saw this line this far, full marks, you are good to go. Now, again, the book doesn't have it, but as a coach, I discovered it. And of course, I did ask this question from my students. And this, again, sort of highlights to you how much more meaningful this whole exercise is. If there is someone running the show for you, and they hold a lot of information back from you, so you don't know it like you would if you read the book yourself. So I asked them what would happen after queen h4, rook he check, king back. Why is this not a winning line? And in fact, I didn't play it out for them because I'm nasty. I just told them this is your line, and I then set the position back to here, and I went, away you go. Why is that wrong? Pause the video, try to figure it out. The answer is that after queen h4, rook h8, check, king g8, knight e4, black has got bishop f8, and after knight f6 check, black has queen takes f8, a marvelous counterpunch, only move, and now black is totally winning. This variation is super important to be part of this lesson, because again, this reinforces the idea that yes, you are attacking like a madman, but that doesn't mean that your opponent is not allowed to use tactical sources to save themselves. And so this line is a big no-go. The icing on the cake is how the game actually ended, which was the king g7 variation. Check, 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 check. No, sorry. Knight h5, take, rook e check here, bishop d3, and in this position they played d6. Now the last big question, not quite, I will give you 2 more questions, is what's the most convincing win after bishop takes, rook takes? This is a question that looks a lot easier than what it actually is. So here is your challenge. Pause your video again if you want to figure out the most convincing line after bishop takes h7 winning for white. Away you go. So the trickery here is that bishop takes and check. Until now it's all fine and dandy, but all of a sudden here the checks seem to fail, and in fact by far the best move here is the quiet g6, which introduces a mating idea on the open ranks, which is clearly credited to g6. So going back, after g6, most people call it off here, and it's okay, but black still has a queen e8 defense. If you saw that move before you started calculating that line, you get 5 stars. If you didn't, it's fine. Last chance, or rather the last occasion now to pause the video, find out the best move for white. This is another tricky story here. Away you go. So the final move is quite amazingly a retreating move, and as such it's difficult to find. So obviously the check is not in our interest because black wants to escape. Likewise g7 king here, and black escapes. So by now, if you calculated these 2 lines, you realize that the common theme is that the black king wants to run away from e7. So naturally, you would want to prevent that. And queen h4 is just a really awesome example of how that could be accomplished. And now there are 2 mate threats in the air. One of them is queen f6 followed by rook h8. The other one is the more direct check. And if king takes, then check followed by mate. And this is essentially unstoppable. And so white actually went on to win. In fact, black resigned in this very position. So let's do a very quick summary. If you think that your tactics are failing, I think that alongside doing tactical exercises, you should find positions like this, which is very difficult without a good coach or a coach, whatever, who actually will present you positions that offer you myriads of avenues, lines to calculate, evaluate, and then make a decision. Because tactics, in the end of the day, is calculation. And a lot of tactical puzzles offer you nothing but one straight line where neither side has a chance to divert or to find a different way to play. And so it becomes a very robotic type of thing, and it creates a mentality where I'm looking for the one winning line. And so people really get disappointed, discouraged, and upset when they are in a position where both the attacker and the defender have multiple avenues to go down on, and the only way to figure out what's going on is just very thorough and methodical calculation. And so this is, in my opinion, best practice by doing exactly that, finding positions, examples where a lot of calculation, lots of lines are present. Dvoretsky's examples are such, but they are ridiculously hard. So I found myself lucky to bump into this game, and then I went like, this is great coaching material. So calculating lines, evaluating lines, and then making a call on them. This is your best way to improve your calculations and therefore your tactics. In my opinion, this is what I just modeled to you in this video, is the hardest thing, borderline impossible, to pull off without a coach or at least some kind of assistance, someone who knows chess well enough to know when to stop you and ask you the right types of questions. And as a parting thought, I would like to just make it very clear that I did not make this video to promote my coaching services. As a coach, I'm fully booked at the moment, and I really am not looking to expand on that at the moment. So it was not some kind of drumming up my potential students or telling what an amazing coach I am. It's nothing like that. It's just that I don't really see how an 1800 rated amateur or 2000 or 2200 could perform the same lesson for themselves without having someone to guide them along it. That's food for thought. I could be wrong, but I hope that there was plenty in this video for you that was a bit of an eye-opener and showed you what really should happen in here when you are playing a game of chess. So on that note, I'm going to call it a day now. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will be back with more videos soon. Thanks for watching.